All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the next installment. We just started this program last week, but this is called Cabin Fever. The reason we called it Cabin Fever is kind of obvious because lots of us are stuck at home right now, doing our work from home, taking care of our families. And so we thought this would be a great opportunity for us to just do something with you guys that can not help you necessarily as a hairdresser, but just as a human. Many of you might not know that I'm actually a life coach at a company called The Journeyist. And so Sam thought it was a great idea for me to do a program where it's more focused on coaching. So on this particular live every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, we're going to really focus in on things that can help you just be more healthy, both like mind, spirit, body, everything. So this week, I invited my good friend Shawn Flot to the live, and I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more. But I definitely want to just kind of fluff his skirt up a little bit because the reason I really wanted to have Shawn on here is, especially being a hairdresser for 20 years, I have had tons of different kind of body pains and aches and things like that. And I've gone through so many different things, whether it's massage or physical therapy, Pilates, all these different things to try and find basically a solution to that pain. And it wasn't until I started to work with Shawn, he introduced me to, honestly, like a completely different mindset on how to manage those things, but not just manage it, but really find a completely different way to just even picture all of these things that were happening in my body. And I can honestly tell you guys, within this last year of working with Shawn really consistently, doing yoga with him, I'm pretty much pain-free. If I get a little lazy at times or, stop doing the things I know to do, I'll feel some of that pain creep back in. But, I definitely wanted to bring him in and give you guys some tips. Those of you that are watching that are hairdressers, I think you're going to get some great stuff from him, not only just health-wise now, but also as we get back into the salons, these things that Shawn is going to share with you are going to be so essential to you as far as just having better structure, better health. It's going to be really great for you. So hi guys, thanks for joining in. We got tons of people jumping in on Facebook. We got people coming in on the YouTube feed. Hi guys. So if you guys do end up having questions for Shawn, definitely pop them over here into the feed. And yeah. Oh, Kate says, hello, it's a good hairstylist in Germany,
Oh, nice.
Good to be a hairstylist in Germany. Oh, you're probably asking if I know a good hairstylist in Germany. Oh man. Well, Germany is a big place. Cool. So Shawn, why don't you give them a quick introduction of yourself, buddy? Go ahead and give them an introduction.
I'm a physical therapist. I've been a physical therapist for 25 years now. And my business is Moving into Harmony. I love the name. I don't think I really understood that name for a long time when I chose some sort of tag for what I'd be doing in my life and what I would be offering people. But it's really coming around. It's really growing. I would say that most of my learning came from some really great guides. I've been very blessed with teachers, both in the yoga and in a form of hands-on called manual therapy with a man that sort of teased out some of the old philosophy that osteopathy came from. And some of those concepts have even been lost and set aside. And the focus with the old schools was definitely on bone. So we might hear about chiropractic or cranial sacral through. Those are sort of little lenses within the big field of osteopathy, but it's visceral, which is the organ work. And the focus of my teacher was really on the blood. And so Frank Lowen really thought that the body moved in relationship to the blood rather than the mind sort of manipulating and moving the body. And so that was my first sort of installment. He actually helped me get better. I had a head injury too as a cyclist doing triathlons, and was developing severe chronic pain, low back pain, foot pain. I almost became disabled because I couldn't do my job in the hospital. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, he did a subtle manipulation on me. I didn't even, it wasn't like I moved a whole lot. And next thing I know, I was folding forward, my pain was gone. So that's sort of like, that's not normal physical therapy that I learned in school.
Right. Yeah, nothing about what you do with me feels like actual physical therapy. I've been
I
to
get that a
plenty of
lot.
physical therapists.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's actually good that my clients have had that experience with physical therapy, because it hasn't worked for them. So they're kind of hungry, like that really didn't meet my needs. It didn't take me and progress me further.
Right.
And so, yeah, so that was Frank. And, he really guided me into the inner workings and the interrelationships of the body. And then meeting my yoga teacher, first it was Scott Blossom. That's who sort of teased me into understanding with this bone concept. And, I was with another teacher, and here's this guy, I can hear him through the wall. There was a shared building up in Estes Park. And, the imprint for his name and the word shadow yoga sort of came before that. And I think that's, with anybody who's on right now, it's like those little omens, those little messages that sort of, you may not hear them directly, but they land in a way that all of a sudden you start sort of connecting the dots and things lead in a direction that you may have not expected them. That's been my life. And so anyway, Scott putting me in my shin bones changed my whole yoga practice. And I was plateauing. I was working really, really, really hard. Yeah. And that even showed up when I came back to him 6 months later after meeting him, and him just giving me this sense. And I think you've had that, Andrew, where I've, loaded your shins in the clinic, and it's just like this relief.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's interesting. Like so many of the things that we've worked on, like the experience that I've had has been, it almost is trippy sometimes.
Yeah.
Like you'll just say like, hey, bring your attention here. Or like you might just kind of like put your hands on my shoulders or something. That, like you'll just touch a point and all of a sudden everything changes. And it's such a great reminder of how integrated our entire structure is too.
Yeah. We are so interrelated. And that's what I think sort of shook your mind a little bit when I was starting to tell you about interrelationships and more almost like natural qualities rather than trying to tell you about structure or alignment or, you know, some of the things that you had been taught before really weren't contributing to your health.
Yeah.
So
let's give them an introduction to how we want to spend our time today. Like, what do we want to kind of focus our conversation on today?
What I'd like to do is really, I think with all the changing times, with all the challenges that we have in our lives, you know, the uncertainty of what's happening now and tomorrow, when am I going to go back to work? I really think we need to sort of find a way to deal with any challenging time. And now that most people are home, you know, I'm finding people out walking more, being with their family, doing chat times. And so what's going to happen is those things that we've sort of like found time to do are going to give us a chance to go like, wow, I really like that. That really gave me a sense of peace. Or so I think also very simple practices or even an understanding. And, you know, what people can go to my website and reach out to me. And there's some pages that are private. They're not public, but I can give you access to some practices to help this further the process. The other thing that I'm doing are telehealth sessions. So those of you in Oregon or Colorado right now, I'm hoping to expand that. I do sessions online, and it's been fabulous to, you know, do that. But I want to give people some key concepts about grounding and what really stability is.
So where do you usually guide people to find that stability?
I think everything starts in the feet. I think first, really, the inquiry into someone's suffering patterns. What are they really struggling with? And so we can kind of look at the nervous system as one of the key entry points. But really, I think the nervous system, there are qualities that you want to come in touch with rather than the pain is here. Like developing feeling. And I didn't include that in any of the slides, but I think the more you can describe it as hot, tense, stabbing, it can really help your mind to grasp, okay, well, what will I do? Or what are these things that we might go over today? Change those qualities rather than, well, the pain's still there. Okay, well, that may be the case until the body adapts enough to let go of that tensional pattern where there's not the irritation. So the pain, to me, is not really a measure of one's health. That's actually a baseline function. Yeah, we want to be pain-free so that then we can do everything in our lives. But I really think if we can attend to the qualities of our experience, and that can go for anything. And so I think I have, a few cues in that slide with the spine and the nerves, just kind of some cues about those qualities related to how you can, when you find ground, what changes. And then that will feed your brain and your mind to concentrate more on what you could do or what capacities and things you already may be developing to change the experience that you're having. And so I kind of tied those together in terms of opposites for people to see. The second one in there, the free to move, the free to engage. We all know about flight, fight, or freeze.
Right.
But that's part of that same thing. I will say also, people's breath, we tend to say, well, just take a deep breath and relax. And I actually think you need to exhale and release without pushing. And there's more spaciousness and relaxation in that part of us rather than continuing to try and take something more in.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense from a nervous system standpoint, because within the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, the breath has a lot of access to where we are within that, whether we're in the sympathetic or parasympathetic, and the out breath is what brings in that parasympathetic response.
Yeah.
So that's something I've made suggestions to some of my coaching clients is when you're starting to feel that tension, doing that doesn't feel good,
Right.
like that actually increases the tension. So
well,
actually,
it takes
what's
you
better? Yeah. And then
Yeah.
one of the things that I've definitely learned from you with the breath too is to not force it so much, because I think when we start to say like, okay, take a deep breath, it does kind of do this like,
Yeah.
And Grace is even saying, Grace on our Facebook chat, she's saying, yes, exhale. And if you can let that exhale come out in such a just natural, peaceful way, it really triggers that parasympathetic and kind of brings you back out of that highly sympathetic state of that fight, flight, freeze, peas kind of.
Right. And I will say, I'm sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
No, that's it.
No, the exhale in the yoga oftentimes is referred to as empty. And in the emptiness, you've emptied the space. And so the exhale is more about release, but what are you releasing onto and what are you releasing to gain? So as we go through, and you'll see some tensional points that I talk about with bone, understanding where you can release tension, just know that you're holding on to some of your power in places that it could better be served. And so in that we gain space, which is actually the most ultimate stability point. It's not the earth, because, cosmically the earth is held in space. And so that's kind of out there, but
No,
we can relate to it.
definitely. And the more that I kind of, again, one of the things that you've been teaching me is to find stability in space. And that's such a, man, that's such a foreign notion, I think, to some of us, that there's stability in space. But as you start to notice how much stability kind of is like sort of all around you in a way, it's almost like the instability is coming from inside. The stable is that space around us,
Yeah.
which is such a trip, but I love it.
I know. Well, and you can think of it as, you know, space holds everything. In the old Buddhist and the even in the Hatha Yoga, spaces encompasses everything, and it being the most stable, because Earth, we can still have quakes, we can still have fissures, we can still, the plates move on the Earth, you know, and so in that realm, there's not an inherent stability.
Right.
Yeah.
Good question from Lori. She's asking, you were talking about the need to find ground. Can you tell us a little bit more of what do we even mean by that sense of finding ground?
Well, if we go back again to in our body, the ground is what we stand on. And so to me, on a very simple level, it's the surface of your feet against the earth. And I think that's probably one of the best and easiest places to start to notice, how are you having a relationship with the ground that you stand on? And if you want to skip through a couple of the slides, or we can come back to it, but there's really the feet on the earth. And I'll get into the earthing in terms of some research, but this is sort of the basis of how your feet are, and how you can start to understand that the feet show you the balance in your body. And so if anybody wants to stand while we kind of go through this slide, I can guide you with what these lines mean.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage you guys, if you have the space to stand, this is awesome. This is, especially for my friends out there that are hairdressers.
Yes.
This is so huge for us. So if you have the space, if you can jump up and stand up.
The feet are really, they're the reference point for all balance in the body. Like when in the clinic, I always address the feet, and it's not so much reflexology, it's more related to the blood and the connective tissue relationships, which is a little bit beyond what we want to talk about today. But I can tell where people are holding in their physiology. I could tell whether they're holding in their spine or their liver or their sacrum, you know, all those areas, just by feeling the feet. So when you stand, what it's best first to do is try not to correct anything. Your greatest doorway to your own deep intelligence is through your awareness. And Scott always said, first just notice. And you want the desire to have these 4 points in balance with these X's. But first you just want to notice. And in your noticing, there is a different layer of the mind that actually will make an adjustment based on the awareness and an understanding and what you've cultivated in your being, or how you use your body. And so when you notice, and this is true for, I would say, like hairdressers, or now that we're on the computer more, the ball of your feet represent the upper part of the body. Like the collarbone is the ball of the feet across the whole line. It's the collarbones. The neck are your toes. The eyes actually exist between the big toe and the second toe in the web space. And so you can even, you know, palpate around. This is a different model. But if you notice, some of you may be more forward on the balls of your feet. Your heels may feel light, and just be with that. Don't try and change it mechanically. That's one thing I want to really emphasize with people is, if we mechanically try and correct something before the body can make a few adjustments, we actually lose out on a great deal of possibilities. Okay. And so anybody want to comment like where their tendency is? Are you out on the outer edges of the 4 points? Are you in the balls? Pigeon-toed, yeah. I wouldn't try and correct it. I would, just notice. There may be more of a relationship, like if the ankles are tight, there's usually a little bit of a tensional pattern in the hips related to the pigeon toe, kind of a rolling in. And what you might notice is there's a rolling in of the shoulders, or there's other things with that. And Lori says a little bit forward. Yeah. So the forwardness, is often, I see that a lot in people. They'll stand and they'll be a little forward in their body, and we'll get into the back body, what that's about. But when one is trying to hold themselves up, or they've been at the computer, or they've been doing, everything's in front of them, things get pulled, and time and time and time and time and time again. And Andrew, how long were you doing hairdressing prior?
I was full-time in the salon for 17 years. So,
yeah.
And like, when I say full-time, I mean hairdresser full-time, which is like way more than full-time usually. Like 50 hours a week on our feet.
Right. Yeah. And so with all that forwardness, imagine how much your tissues have to adapt to everything in front of you. And that's another thing I really would like people to understand is these simple little things will help change some of that adaptation. But, how long did it take you to get there that you're not going to see a big change right away, but you start moving in the other direction. So I see a lot of people saying they have, they're on their heels and their toes. Does that mean they're balanced, or are they on the outsides more than the insides on the heels and toes? Because what I tend to see is, yes, heels and toes, but you're in the outside 2 points rather than balanced through all 4. So I'm curious, inner heel and shoulder area of the foot.
I would bet that I would just take a guess that a lot of us that are hairdressers go to the outside edges. And I think what we're discovering with me is that a lot of it comes from the tightness in my low back, that kind of squeeze of the butt cheeks, and that push forward of the hips kind of almost like pushes us like outward in a way to those outside edges of the feet.
Well, people can actually play with that if they just, don't go big with this, but if you like squeeze your shoulder blades together or hold your spine up, you'll notice the feet roll to the outsides. And so the outer sides of the feet are actually your back body holding. The inner part of the leg and the more inner part of the spine, the central part of our being that doesn't like to be held tight, is more the inner line, the inner points. So a couple references to this: the yang is the outer edges, the yin is the inner edges.
Interesting.
And what do we associate yang with in the autonomic nervous system?
The sympathetic, the charged.
Yep. Or more muscular strength. Whereas the parasympathetic is the yin, more of the balance. The thing is, though, there's those little dots in the yin and the yang. Those are the dynamos of those two dynamics. But most people, like you said, I think are in their outside edges of their feet.
So Victoria's saying her heels are full and she goes to the inner foot. What would draw us more into that inner foot?
I would say, the outer toes is really what the outer collarbone to the shoulder. And so my guess is there's some sort of pulling in, like rounding shoulder. And so I've been playing with this, and I'm trying to come up with a little video. But if I go watch what happens in my shoulders when all I'm doing is I'm going to look at a point on the wall, or let's just say here with the hairdressing, all of a sudden my adaptation, you see how everything kind of starts to roll in. And so I would say there's probably a drawing more in than, and it's not, you can't do this. It's not going to correct it because the feet will just pull out. So we can talk about that a little bit in terms of what happens up here. This is the trap. That's why they call these the traps.
Right.
But it's the trap because it blocks all of the descending energy to the power in the feet. So we'll talk about that a little bit, how to curb that.
Yeah. And so, lots of you are commenting different things that you're noticing. So this is really good. And this is one of the things that Shawn has really taught me. The awareness of how you're handling, or how your body is handling what you're putting into it, almost.
And what you're doing with it.
What you're doing with it. That's the awareness that's so important, because once we start to become highly aware of those things, like, oh, interesting. And I think the hard thing is to try, like he's saying, to not go into this space of like, okay, well, how do I fix it? Yeah. Because that's the tendency that we've been taught. It's like, oh, I have a headache. Here, take a Tylenol. Oh, I have this. Hey, take this pill. Oh, I have, my wrist hurts. Okay, put a brace on it. And it's like fix. Yeah. And it doesn't bring our awareness to the actual source of the imbalance and the source of what's happening. And it's incredible what happens when we start to really, truly trust the intelligence that we have in our body, because your body knows exactly what it's supposed to do. And once you start trusting that and just bringing awareness to the imbalances, that's where the stuff actually starts to really change, like true change, not just like, oh, I'm going to pull my core in to try and combat my neck pain, or, because that's a lot of what I was taught often in my PT sessions is pull this in, tighten this, constrict that. And instead of the last year, it's become, oh, okay, I feel pain in this like kind of trap. It's a common place that I will, especially if I get lazy with my yoga, I'll get this little pinch of pain back here. And it started to happen the other day, Shawn. And the thing that actually helped me the most was I actually just stood in the horse and just kept bringing my awareness to that spot. And it just, it was so cool. Yeah. So cool.
Nice. Well, let's, if people are still standing, let me guide you a little bit on how to find balance. So before you actually leave can you bring that up one more time?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
That's all right. So notice you see where the X has its intersection at the front of the heel? How many people have pain in their front of their heel bone? Or have had that experience of, oh, it's almost like plantar fasciitis.
Shawn doesn't believe in a lot of these things.
So that
you're getting a lot of like hands raised.
Yeah,
definitely.
Or, like, God, I just got to get off my feet. So I want to say, love your feet, especially at night. Rub from that point forward along through with not a lot of pressure, but use some lotion. Maybe you have a loved one that, you can have the feet experience. That's one way to find grounding. I mean, it'll take you right out of your mind, right? We all have had that. Who doesn't like a foot rub?
Actually, I don't mind a foot rub, but I hate my toes being touched, Shawn. That's another thing we might have to talk about. When Michelle and I first moved in together, man, if her toes touched me, like when we were sleeping, I'd be on the other side of the bed. Like I would just like catapult out of the bed. I'm getting much better with it, but
yeah, I'll remember that one. Good. But that point actually in the yoga refers to stiffness in the whole body. Wow. And it's right above the ankle joints, or excuse me, right below. So the ankle joints are right above that, and that the ankles regulate all your fluids. So we'll do a few things to help that, called like snake movements. But that point, really, that's where, do you want to show the shin one for a moment?
Yes,
the
sir.
Golden shins. Yeah. So this is your vertical support. So for now, what I want you to recognize is when I guide you through the 4 points, you're going to feel some sort of firmness in the shin bone and activity you probably have not experienced before, about what's being called upon when we start to balance through the feet. For those of you, I'm going to guess there's probably a lot of you standing that are noticing tension in your knees. So to the best of your ability, I would suggest you can bend the knees a little bit. You don't want to go too much, but just see if you can allow the knees, the tension around the knees to relax. It may not be possible right now, and I'll explain in a moment why that might be. But as best you can, for me to guide you in the 4 points, just see so you have better feeling taking the tension out of the knees. All right. And if you want to put the slide up, you can, Andrew. It's not necessary. But what I want everyone to do is notice their outer heels. And don't, again, all this is notice for now. So the outer heels, that's where the outer ankle is. And the way my yoga teacher explains it is all the body rests on the outer ankle. But the key is you don't push down there. You just, when you feel a release, let's say like Andrew was saying, he had that tension in his shoulder. In his awareness, what began to happen is the release of that energy moved down into the ankles. Mm-hmm. Like a wind taking the sail or a kite. Now, at that outer heel, its relationship is really big with the big toe. And so what I want you to notice is imagine that it's almost like a plane landing, right? You got the, and so that big toe landing, there's a length that happens through that line. And the long bone of the big toe, which starts in the middle of your arch, that shall feel long all the way as if I was pulling on your nail beds. Is everybody sort of feeling that? And just sort of feel that for a moment, because that, to me, that's the transfer from the body through the foot. So we're moving from vertical down, and there's a distribution. Your feet almost feel like they're getting a little bit wider, a little bigger. With that grounding of the front big toe, and don't push, begin to start to feel space on the pinky side of your ball of your feet, like between the pinky toe and the fourth toe. And if you'd like, you can, we have some people in our shadow yoga group that can like play piano with their toes like they do with their fingers. And the capacity is there. It's really there. So feel, and you notice your hands might be doing the same thing your toes are doing. That's the other thing is when people are really concentrating on this, all of a sudden their hands is like, or their tongue is moving or. So in that opening space out here at the pinky side, you'll notice the inner heel kind of start to ground. And then the shin, see if the ankles can have a little bit of freedom. Just don't get real tense trying to do this. I think that's what happens is we seem to try too hard. So maybe lessen on the effort and just start to play with this dexterity in your feet. And then with that 4-point balance, what do you begin to notice up above? And people just be for a while before you come back to the computer to type in your comment. But the idea is the feet are, in the physical body, the feet are water. They are the water element. Water lives under the earth. And it's really important that there's fluidity, and the container that holds the water isn't small. There's a woman, I can't remember her name, I think Lori follows her, about foot biomechanics and, kind of more physically related, but I love the comment she said about we always put our feet in coffins. And so the container that you're sticking these beautiful feet in all day actually can lessen your capacity to actually use your feet correctly. And if you're in a shoe that's more worn to the outer edge, that can even contribute.
Yeah, just kind of on a side note too, Shawn, like since you're starting to talk about that, I actually have a couple questions. One's from, I think her name's Naf, and then one from our friend Sonia, asking specifically about shoes. Like, what kind of shoes do you recommend for people?
Well, are we talking work, or are we talking being outside? And
I think work. Yeah.
I think the flatter the better. When we start to have a heel rise, it'll put us forward. And obviously, the higher the heel, the more the body gets thrown forward. And again, Lori shared with me, Ryan, I can't remember his name anyway. He played a female in a show, and when he was dressed in heels and a skirt, he realized how much he felt vulnerable and couldn't run because he was in heels and so tight, and it jacked him up. It put him in a fight or flight mode by being in his heels.
Yeah. How many of the girls out there wearing those big tall heels to work? Come on, give me a thumbs up or something. I know you guys are out there. And I
get it, from a fashion standpoint, and from,
sure.
That's one thing, but then it's just that the whole body has to adapt to that change.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we really discovered, especially with our kind of work, Shawn, is that, if you're working at a computer or if you're working on a human in front of you, even our eyes are pulling us forward. Everything is kind of pulling us forward. So I can definitely see that, like, if you also had a heel that was like pushing you forward too, we're definitely going to be really far forward in that balance point.
Yeah. And I think, that bringing that up, Andrew, so I suffered Wednesday night. I did a lot of telehealth sessions on Monday and Tuesday. And, I was suffering enough to where I thought about the Aleve because, I had to get up and work. And so I actually was able to lay there for about 15 minutes and sort of try and understand. I had a big tension at the top of my eyes. My neck was hurting. I mean, I was having one of these bang, bang headaches that I haven't had for a long time. But it gave me information when you say eyes. And so the forward head or the altering in our posture, I don't think we do ourselves justice by trying to correct our posture by strengthening something else that may look weak or tight. I think if you can address the root of the issue, which is the senses, talking, looking, hearing, all these things pull us up and out. And in the yoga, before meditation, even before some of the breath work, they talk about withdrawing of the senses in order to concentrate the energy into a small space that you actually reside in. And so if we can address it from that standpoint, or the shoes, or moving ahead of ourselves through the day instead of let my feet, I know what I need to do. I need to go to the cash register, or I need to go answer the phone, or I need to go get a cup of tea. And so we can set that on our mind, but then let our feet take us there rather than get ahead and just rush. I think those little things can take out those tendencies that then all of a sudden we show up, we're tight.
Yeah. One of the things that you've definitely taught me, and I've got a couple questions popping up here that we want to address, but one of the things that you definitely taught me is let the feet lead the way. Like, even in our yoga, it's so incredible. Like, and I've been studying this yoga form for a year now, and I'm just now, like, honestly, this morning when I was doing my yoga, I was like, what's the part where we kind of do the little
in the warm-up, the Jiva Chalanam?
Yeah, dude, today I felt like my feet pivoted me instead of my body pivoted me, and it was like, ooh, okay, now I'm starting to get this. It's really cool.
That's just amazing, because that actually instigates the fluidity rather than the mechanicalness of movement.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know that I'm getting quite a few different questions about arches. because some people are like, oh, I have very flat arches. There's a couple that say they have very high arches. Do
Yeah.
you recommend arch supports? Like, what's your take on that?
Oh,
Sorry, I know that might be a tough question, huh?
well, I'll just throw something out there and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
So the relationship of the mid horizontal arch. So, where you see the roundness of the ball, the feet coming down,
Like right in this area.
Like right in there. And I would say going across. So there's a horizontal arch, and then there's a longitudinal arch in the body, in the leg, in the foot.
Okay.
And the horizontal arch is just like the horizontal diaphragm. So that area of your foot actually reflects the diaphragm. So anybody that's holding up, and let me see if I can come back here a little bit. For those of you where the lower ribs are sort of pulled up and you're holding in your chest, which I'll explain a few other tidbits in a moment, but that holding, or actually do it, like pull yourself really up and notice how your arches get tighter. And then what I would suggest is don't mechanically correct it. Just note any holding in the chest, armpits, neck, low ribs. Just notice and see if those things will release, and see if your feet feel like they get a little longer. So that would be for the tense arches.
So do you kind of attribute that possibly being part, like when people do have that super high arch, it's kind of that pulling up?
Yeah. I oftentimes also see it with people who are Porsches without a maintenance record.
That took me a second, but I totally get that.
A little cryptic, but you
Guys,
got it.
How many of you can relate to being a Porsche with no maintenance record? I think a lot of hairdressers fit into that role. Yes. Yeah. And I noticed that we had like someone who's a nurse pop in, and I'm sure you guys are the same way, just high energy, always going, and just not having a lot of time to take care of ourselves.
Just always on alert, always planning, always, trying to get ahead. Or, I worked with nurses for 8 years in the hospital, and gosh, it's always like, oh, I need your help. And I mean, I'm asking them for different things, and just, I can't imagine now, being out now almost 17 years from that environment. They are, anybody, teachers, nurses, the challenge and the multitude of things that they have to balance. Wow. But the feet, can help you. And, always excuse yourself to the bathroom and stay a few extra minutes if you can. If that's all you can do, So that would address the high arch.
Okay.
The lower arch is more of there's a little more involved in that. I would say that there's probably a little bit more of an imbalance between the outer and the inner, and that there's like a heavying, dense, falling in kind of pattern. Or it's also that I see it with people who have a lot of restriction in the pelvis to many factors, that the base of the pelvis is so tense that the blood and the energy going into the legs is not available, so they just sort of end up collapsing in.
Sense. So, I mean, would you recommend things like orthotics and things like that, or do you kind of try and stay away from that stuff?
Yeah, in the interim, foot support is helpful. I think massaging the feet at the end of the day, I think doing something and developing this 4-point sense, and then we're going to talk about the grounding wind that can help as well. But the foot supports can be, they're like, the way I put it in the yoga is if you need a block or you need a strap, those things are okay to help you get somewhere. But if they become a crutch that you always have to rely on them, the potential for finding your optimal balance or finding more potential just doesn't happen. So use them when you need them, but then learn how to take care of your feet. I like this thing.
Yeah, Lori actually she just popped in and asked about it.
Yeah, these are only $7.
Foot rubs, massage, hand and foot. Okay.
And the key to these is that you see the little knobbies. Let me pull mine. Well, yeah. So you see the little knobbies on them?
Uh-huh.
So the knobbies are meant for sensory. It's not meant to try and break something up. It's literally, and you can use your hands. While I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm kind of like rolling it on my foot, but rolling it on side to side, long circles. I actually have a little video on using the ball on my website. So those of you that want to contact me, I'm happy to send that to you. It's, again, actually, that one probably would be okay. I got to figure out some things. I've held back on a lot of this information, and Andrew's been really key. And
give it to them.
They're coming. Just put it out there. So don't hold on to it. Nope. And so, but the purpose, what I would suggest with this is use it as a sensory. And the way I usually test this in the clinic is I'll have somebody just do it with one foot, roll, circles, work the heel, work the ball of the foot, actually play with the ball. And before they do the next one, I have them stand. And what did you notice when I did that with you the first time?
With me?
Yeah, with the ball.
Just more ability to sense into the foot.
Yeah.
So and that made so much sense when you said about the knobbies being more about sensory. And I just didn't even think about that because I've always pictured those things as kind of like a massage tool or something like that. But it totally makes sense that it's sort of waking up all those nerves and tissues in there to be like, oh, okay, I can really identify those balance points and how I'm standing now. So that makes sense.
That's the trick, is sensory guides you. And so actually a muscle spasm is based on the sensory experience in the body. And so your guidance, your awareness is through your senses and your feeling. And so I would really encourage people to invest, 1, 2, 1 at work, 1 at home, 1 for travel. I mean, they're inexpensive. I was given this as a gift when I moved here to the Valley, and I was like, oh, thank you. But then like 2 years later, I'm like, oh. And so, I mean, you don't want to go without one of those because of the ability to sense, and that sensory information, it'll give you guidance.
So where can they find those typically?
Amazon has them. That's probably the easiest place. I know it's probably going to be hard right now because of the situation we're in.
Can you show the packaging one more time for me?
Yeah.
I want one too. Foot rubs.
And oftentimes Amazon will give you a deal buying 2.
Cool.
Yeah. REI used to carry them, but I would say Amazon would be your best bet.
Nice.
We have a little store here in town called Paradise Shoes. And so all my new clients, I send them over there, and I cue them by saying, go in and tell Julian you want a foot rub.
That's awesome. When they first started doing that, I bet they were like,
know where they're coming from. And I tell them, like, take your shoe off, put your sock up on the thing.
Cool. Yeah, Lori said there's lots of sites selling them.
Okay, good. Yeah, they're pretty, there's a lot out there, and I don't think it's a well-used tool. So you should be able to find them pretty easily.
Cool.
But that would be helpful many times in the day, especially for anybody on their feet a lot, like the hairdressers, is, just get on it. Oh, look at there.
Yeah,
Less
Lisa found
than
it for
$6.
$5.49. Nice.
Nice. So that would be a really inexpensive way. And again, you're just rolling to sense and then use the 4-point relationship that I guided them in.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've a couple of you are asking about like what if you do have certain things that you're working with, like some of you are asking about standing on the front of your feet or rolling the ankles, different things like that. So
we can do the churnings toward the end.
Cool. Okay. Do we want to head that direction?
Yeah, I want to show the grounding wind real quick, and then we can move there, and then we can just open it up to questions.
Okay. Yeah, we only have about 10 more minutes left, Shawn. So.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Yeah. Let's just show the grounding wind for a minute, and then.
Okay.
There's so much to.
Is it this one? Sorry.
Keep going. Keep going. That one.
This one.
Yeah, so that's from my teacher, Shandor Rimete. It's in his Shadow Yoga book, which you can also find on Amazon. But the back of the tuft of the skull to the heels in the whole back body, that's a downward descending wind like a cascade, waterfall. And in the front body, it's the navels to the ankles. And everything is dependent in the health on this sort of kite or sail that the body needs to be able to descend. So anything that moves in the opposite direction of the downward force from the tuft of the skull to the heels or the navel to the ankles in front, like holding the kneecaps and holding the thighs, you're actually moving against the natural force to support you. Maybe we can have another conversation about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so much here.
I know. Gosh. All right, well, let's do the churnings.
Yeah, this one's huge, so definitely want to get to that.
I'm going to turn a light on.
Okay. While Shawn's getting set up, one of the things that I was really hoping that he would share with us today is this process of churnings. And the reason for it is I do this probably anywhere from 3 to 5 times a day. It's how I start the day. It's how I finish my day. A couple of times throughout the day, if I feel like I'm getting kind of stuck or hardening up, or especially right now there's a lot of tension in our world. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of fear and anxiety, and that stuff can kind of build up inside of us. Mm-hmm. And this is a practice that really, truly helps me with that stuff.
Yeah, and so they're called the joint rolls. I'm going to guide you so that they're not mechanical. So we want to stay in the fluid idea. But really, like Andrew said, you can do these multiple times a day, first thing out of bed, after you've brushed your teeth. And I have a whole thing on the tongue that relates to stress. But anyway, the rolling of the joints actually starts to stimulate the circulation. And that's part of our warm-up that we do that Andrew's referring to in the yoga. But then through the day, if you're feeling stagnant, the going to reach for the coffee at 2, 3 o'clock, oftentimes that's not because you're tired, it's because you're congested. And by doing the churnings, which will only take you 3 minutes, doing 8 repetitions, which is what we're going to do, will take you 3.5 minutes. And so doing them helps to sort of recirculate, like he said. And then before you go to bed, so let's do them. So everybody just find a place where you can not clip a wall. If you have that. Can you see me, Andrew?
Yes, sir. Perfect. All right.
So everybody just stand for a moment. And for the ladies, I want you to start on your right foot. For the men, start on your left, unless if you have an association to a different gender, like you're a man, but inside you're more feminine, then start with your right. So it's based in the energetics. So you just take your foot and make sure you go on the tops of the toes. This is really hard for people, is to make sure This part is the front of your throat and neck. So the whole tension piece can be a little tough. So just be easy. And then as you roll the ankle, it's really just about feeling your whole body, but this foot is actually what's kind of keeping you stable. So I'll talk you through it. So 1, 2, 3, there's a rhythm. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Switch directions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. When you use the feet in the first one, move to your other side, it gives you a sense of what the feet are doing. So roll, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Bow your chin, and everyone go easy. No noise in the neck. And as you roll the head, draw circles with your nose and put your awareness at the base of your skull and your tailbone. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Make sure there's no tension in the tailbone. Balanced in your feet. No pain. These are just gentle rolls. 6, 7, 8. Row your collarbones. So try not to squeeze your shoulder blades together. Just roll the collarbones. Feel the glide of the shoulder blade on the ribs. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Switch directions. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For a moment, go back and just roll your feet and see if it makes it easier. Some way easier than it did when you first started, just for a check-in. Then come back to your feet. So you can just test that. It's not necessarily part of the practice, but it gives you a sense. All right, the next one, you're going to raise you can stay forward. I'm just showing you so you don't arch your spine. Just bring your hands forward and roll circles. So I'll come close. It's just a circle. Your eyes are being awe of the wrists, and the elbows are coming together without pushing. Then what I want you to do is, there's usually a dominance in the weave. Switch the weave and do it again. This helps with the ambidextry. A lot of you are right-handed or left-handed. So just do what you can. It'll change over time, that awkwardness. Those using your hands a lot, you can do this kind of weave. It's really good for the wrists and the forearms, and do the same thing. That's a little additive. All right, next one. Touch your front collarbone and your back rib. Turn from your belly. Stay balanced in your feet. So you're not turning from your ribs, you're turning from your belly. Go easy if you have spinal issues. Don't force it. Feel the movement across here. Hands and feet. And finish on your left. Next one, from your ankles. Even though it looks like I'm moving in the pelvis, I'm actually moving in my ankles. Be free in the pelvis, and you'll notice the head will do its own thing. This is really good for necks. Remember, Andrew?
Yeah, I was surprised at how good this was for my neck.
Yeah, the key is let all the movement come from the ankles. Knees aren't wonky, so it's not this. Firm shin without knee tension, without wonky knees too. Other direction. Four, 5, 6, 7, 8. The next one, you don't have to go deep. So there's a warm-up video we can send you of our teacher's wife from many, many, many years ago. But you don't have to go as deep as she is. You can just do little pumps like this. My hands are on my knees to say to my kneecaps, just relax. So I'm not holding myself in. Just bend the ankles. That's all ankle work. 5, 6. Feel relaxed in the neck. Other direction. Fluidity. Feel as much of yourself as you can. All right, then the last one's really funky. I'll show you from the side, even though I'll come back. The circle's in here. It's from the ankles. So it's a snake. Pump the ankles. Bend the ankles, then push the shins down into the feet. Try not to snap back. Try not to pull yourself up. Just push down, like you're pushing the floor away. Kind of like the old Nautilus machines when you laid on your back and you push the sled. Feel as supple and snaky as you can, and don't worry how ugly it might feel. All right.
That's great, Shawn.
How's it feel?
I love that. It feels so good.
Well, I'm sorry I ran out of time for questions, but if you have,
can take a if you've got 5 more minutes, if you guys have a couple of specific questions, we'll need to wrap up here pretty soon. But if you guys have a couple of specific questions for Shawn, we could field a few questions before we wrap up.
They can also ask that question on the contact page. There's enough space there that I can reach back out.
Okay, perfect. So if you guys want to get in touch with Shawn for any reason, go to his website. It's movingintoharmony.com. There's a tab on there that says contact, super easy to find. And that's the best way to reach out to him.
There's also some great videos, and I'm going to be readdressing now that Andrew's been getting me to put up the content out. But best thing is to reach out and contact, and then I can say where you saw me, so I have a reference.
So Monique asked about tips for her shoulder.
Yeah, the biggest thing I think easily is just to notice if you're holding in the armpits or the side ribs or in the neck. A lot of the constriction in one's life, things kind of get held in there or held up. So I would just release the armpits, release the ribs, release the lower ribs. Feel how you can just shoulders relate a lot to heart and lung, and just we hold so much in here.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it looks like most of the questions are kind of around similar things, just like knee pain, ankle pain.
Yeah. A lot of those joint issues are because people have muscularly held on. So the joints get tight because of the muscle imbalance or the muscle holding or an imbalance from an injury. Mm-hmm. So finding those 4 points and letting the shin bones, as if I had my hands on the tops of your shins and was pushing them down into that X point at the bottom of the foot. You won't be able to push, but the idea is to let that shin bone sort of gain the vertical support rather than being locked in the knee or the ankles or up even in the neck. I think that's a good way to start.
Yeah. And I think it's probably going to be a pretty similar answer for Kelly too, right? As far as like pinch nerves and stuff.
My guess is there's a lot of holding, like in here, the forward head, all this gets really short. I wouldn't try and just correct this. I would let the lower body be more of my support and then see how things start to soften in the front of the spine, that things aren't pulled in. So a lot of that neck stuff is because things have been anchored in.
Right.
And the low back too. It's like I see a lot of low backs, and a lot of it's because people aren't supported in their legs. Yeah. Or they've been taught how to support in their legs by muscularly holding or holding the belly in. And those things really don't contribute to the natural. Those are very mechanical corrections. And I think The shin bones take about 9 months to develop. And there's a couple of, for those of you that are still on, the yin horse or the goat stance that I will be posting is a very easy and accessible way to get the ground and sort of balance this sympathetic tone. But even sitting, getting in and out of a chair. Can you see me?
Yeah.
So I go to sit down. Instead of pushing down, I just I bend the ankles and let my body settle versus pushing down. You see how things go up. As I come up, instead of pulling up, just push down. Lean forward and push down versus pulling up. Those little things through the day can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah. And just that, honestly, guys, that churning that that Shawn just showed you, my wife, Michelle, she's had wrist pain for years and years because of she had a huge accident, had plates and pins put into her wrist. And she's found the churnings, just doing those churnings every day, have actually helped a ton, just keeping the blood flow. And she hasn't had issues with her wrist since. So just that simple practice, you can do that, like you said, multiple times throughout the day. It's just so good for the blood, and it's so good for your body health.
The magic of those churnings is it's all the ankle stuff. And in the yoga, the wrists are directly related to the ankles. The hand is the foot. So I'm so happy that she's doing them all and she's seeing the effect.
Yeah. All right, we got to start to wrap up, but I wanted to bring this up because this is something that I think is so important. Buddy was saying, he stopped working 12 hours a day standing doing hair, you know, and you're so right on, buddy. Like this is something that you're going to start to really hear from Sam and I both. We really believe that right now we're being asked to change.
Yeah.
We're not being asked, we're being forced.
Yeah.
We're being told you will change now.
Well, forced to choose.
Yeah. And the hair industry, and I'm sure we had a nurse on here, and I'm sure there's a couple other people. We are so obsessed with productivity, and we almost wear it as a badge of honor. Like, oh, I work 24 hours a day, and I never get any rest, and it's time. We have to let go of this.
This is our opportunity.
There's no way to heal these things if we just continue to abuse the crap out of ourselves. It's kind of like the boyfriend that abuses his girlfriend and comes back with flowers all the time. There's going to be a point the flowers aren't going to work anymore. And it's the same thing. Like you can never take enough Tylenol. You can never take enough yoga classes. You can never take enough PT. Yeah. None of that is going to fix anything if we don't go to the source, which is abusing our body and not taking care of ourselves. So
it's interesting you brought it up that way, Andrew, because the mind holds more masculine energy and the body is much more the feminine.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect as well. Our mind abuses our body.
Yeah. All right, brother. This was so awesome, and I know we could go on for like another half hour.
You and I, we like get in time warps,
dude. The first time Shawn and I just kind of had a hangout sesh just to talk about health and all this stuff. I think 3.5 or 4 hours flew by, and my wife's like, what are you guys doing? I was like, oh crap, it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're good at getting into the time warp. Shawn, we'll definitely have you back on at some point, because I think we have lots more that we could share with people that are going to really support them in their health. Guys, next week, I've got one of my favorite human beings coming on. Her name is Lynn Christian. She has been my life coach since, I think, 2003. She is just a powerhouse, and she's going to talk to you guys about how to really come from a place that gives us strength, especially in these challenging times, which is getting deeper into our sense of core values. So make sure you come back next week. Of course, Tuesday, you've got Tuesday with Sammy, which is going to be more hair cutting. I think he said next Tuesday, he's going to focus on like texturizing and detailing techniques for different fabrics and different techniques within that. So that's at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And we'll be here next Friday for Cabin Fever at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for all the love. Shawn, we've had like people from all corners of the world today saying hello. So thank you.
I'm very grateful for being able to speak out. So thanks for having me on.
And of course, this will be up on YouTube and on Facebook for replay, so you can always come back and watch the churnings anytime you want. And if you have any questions, reach out to Shawn at movingintoharmony.com.
I also have a Facebook page with the same name.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can connect with him
either
on Facebook
personal or my business. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. See you soon.